One of the things that I wanted to chat through today was we've made a number of predictions about the card deck industry, and I think it'd be fun to dive through those because we sit in the middle of this space and we're looking at it and we're watching what trends are happening, and one of the things that we envision with Deckible is that we see more people coming to the card deck industry, because right now the number of people who use card decks is not as big as you might think. If you're in the card deck space and you're in the spiritual oracle space, you surround yourself by people like you, and you think that this space is actually bigger than it is potentially, right? And in reality, the number of people who are into the oracle and tarot cards is probably quite a small percentage of the total population. But there's also people with flashcard decks and coaching decks. There's a bigger industry around it that is the same medium. And what we believe is that by making it more accessible to more people will join, right? And I keep seeing crazy things. Like the last 2 weeks, I've noticed that DoorDash is Uber delivery. What's the one I use? Skip the Dishes is the one near me, right? But they're even delivering card decks to you, which is pretty crazy, right? But it's an emergence of the category that you can order your Indian takeaway and a card deck, right? What does that open up? What potential does that mean to us, right? And yesterday, I opened up Audible. I have something like 800 books on Audible, right? So I don't read anymore in a weird, that sounds weird, but if I'm going to read a book, I listen to it. If I'm sitting down, I'm actually creating. So I read when I'm running, hiking, driving, traveling, right? And Audible, as with all these platforms, they do this kind of end of year review. And every one of these platforms does this for you. Duolingo did it to me, tells me all my progress on learning and the statistics, right? Audible does it, Netflix does it, every one of these platforms does it. And Audible yesterday told me, and it used a card deck metaphor, because it put a card on the screen and asked me to guess, to flip. If I flipped it, what was my favorite category? And I flipped it over. So card decks are like all pervasive in our culture. We may not notice that as much. I'm certainly super attuned to that because I'm looking for it. I do a lot of research, but gathering these dots and seeing DoorDash using it, seeing Audible doing it, what we're really seeing is the mainstreaming of card decks, right? And I use the expression more Muggles, fewer wizards, because if you know the kind of Harry Potter scene, that the magicals are like the 10-15% of society, and they have the ability of sight to see all these things, and the Muggles don't see all that, right? The majority. But so my prediction is that for card decks, there's more Muggles, fewer wizards, right? More people to the industry. And the way to do that is to make it simpler, make it more accessible. And if you have a card deck right now, you need to go and walk down a dark alley into an esoteric store. And if you don't know the space, it can be quite daunting, right? And those books are more accessible now. You can find them on Amazon, you can find them on Barnes & Noble, right, the decks. But it's still that space of, if we recognize, if we're in it, how can we make it more appealing to more people, right? And we had a conversation the other day about gateway games and gateway decks, right? So as a board gamer, everyone in the board game industry talks about gateway games as a way of bringing people into the industry. You teach them a very simple game that's fun and rewarding, and they want more. And I think with card decks, it's very much the same thing. Is what is the killer deck? What is the gateway deck? And one of the things I was telling you the other day was like a deck and a strengths deck and a values deck are very simple, accessible decks that everyone can use that bring people to the space. They can get curious about the industry because they're sort of aware that it exists, right? They use a strengths deck. Everyone can say, everyone can discover what their strengths are. Everyone can discover what they value by working through a values deck, and everyone can use an emotions deck to express themselves and help develop their emotional vocabulary. And these are all healthy things, but they're just examples within the card deck industry, and that progresses, if you like, down the line to affirmations are probably more accessible. Then you go down to an oracle deck, and then you go to a tarot deck. There's like a skill level necessary to use these rises, if you like. You often go to have a paid reading for someone because somebody's more expert they have a gift and they read the deck for you, and that's an amazing experience. But those decks are just as accessible to everybody, and everyone can have those decks, right? And one of the things that lured me into this space was right at the beginning, was I did this kind of website of card deck users, and how many card decks do you have? And it's like this guilty addiction that everyone has in the card deck industry. It's like, oh yeah, I want to say, but I've actually got 10 decks. No, I have 20 decks. I have 30 decks. Exactly, right? Anyone that's in this space that hasn't denied to their partner how many decks they've bought. Oh, no, that wasn't a new deck, right? And that's so true, right? Or when we did this survey, we ended up like, I have 5, 10, 20, 40 plus. And people added to the survey 50 plus. And I thought, okay. And then somebody added 100 plus. And I was like, so this is an addictive sport.